yeah, thank you so much to myself also to get invited to this talk. So yes, as Alberto said, I have several hats sometimes, and even though I'm part of the organization of this conference as ALKA Wildlife, I also have another job in Lithuania at the Nature Research Center, and is in representation of this institution that I will give this talk today. And I'm gonna talk about several things I've done in this project, but I was planning to talk about many things, but we are lucky I don't have to talk about all the things I have not done. And after this talk, we will have my my boss from Lithuania. She will come and give us a much better talk than mine, explaining her direct experience with this project. What I'm going to talk about with this tricky title, people were asking me to add an interrogation sign at the end. But I really think there is potential to engage anglers as ambassadors of freshwater biodiversity. But before talking about this directly, we are going to talk about my childhood a little bit. Back in last century, like 1985 or so, I was a little kid. My grandma used to buy this Tele Indiscreta. It was one of these glossy journals that with famous people appearing. And she gave me an album with stickers that I love. It was this album with animal stickers that you could collect. And there was something there. I mean, I love the album, but there was something there that I didn't understand very well. It said, conocerlos es amarlos. It said, literally, to know them is to love them. And I was thinking, what does that mean? I don't understand. Does it mean that in order for me to be a good biologist, I have to memorize all the names to love them? I didn't understand it at the time. But then later in life, I managed to understand this sentence, and we will see at the end of the talk what the real meaning of this sentence is. And I'm gonna start with an even older story. This is the end of the 19th century. People back then, they were seeing birds as just as some material, something to buy or to use. Or it was really popular to buy feathers for the hats of the ladies, and it was so big. This business was like 2.8 billion sterling pounds a year. It was an immense amount of money. So they were shooting zillions of birds all the time just for the feathers. And there are accounts of fashion walks in the streets and all this fashion stuff, saying that they had a dress made with the patch throat of 3,000 hummingbirds. Like, imagine using that for decoration. It goes to this level. By the end of the 19th century, this ornithologist, Chapman, he did a couple of walks up and down Manhattan in New York, and he was doing a census of birds, just looking at the hats of the ladies in the street. And then he counted all these species in the hats. Back then, there was a lot of pressure already saying, okay, we cannot continue like this. This is too much. Like, we are destroying all the bird population. And also at that time, I mean, I think you know this space. Even Charles Darwin was known by his amazing love for hunting birds. He was crazy about it, and this is part of his this text here is part of his autobiography, and then he was commenting on, he was trembling when he was shooting his first bird, and so excited, and he kept all his life doing that, very enjoying a lot. this was birding at the time. That's what birding meant. Birding was hunting birds. What's birding today? What comes to your mind when you hear our friend Vasek, for example? I'm gonna go birding. The meaning has changed quite a lot, and this is another very recent story from Spain. A couple of weeks ago, in Asturias, in the north of Spain, there was a very surprising arrival. It was several snowy owls, which are, this species is never the Harry Potter owl. this species has never been seen, or have never been seen like that in Spain. And people went berserk, they went crazy, like lots of people everywhere. Like you can see the first piece of news there of 2,500 results. It says there are people that started crying to see this animal for the first time in their lives. Like birding has changed a lot since Darwin time. And this has a main reason, in my opinion. I think birding is now different because technology and outreach have collaborated to change this name. And this is another example of how this changed. But in the US, the very first bird guide was the one on the right. Is it like that? Yes, on the right of the screen. It was titled Birds Through an Opera Glass. Up until then, people couldn't see the birds unless they shoot them. They shot them. Like it was impossible to see at a distance and be able to identify any details. So it was only until in another industry, the opera business, they created these binoculars, and then later they improved the prisms inside, and then created proper binoculars, that people were able to identify the birds outside, and then no longer needed to shoot so many of them. Still, there were many collections for zoos that needed shooting, and there were huge controversies about that, and there was more and more pressure. But in the end, as we have seen with the snowy owl, technology and outreach, sharing this knowledge with people, they managed to change the meaning of birding to what we see today. Like birding is a leisure activity, and you learn about them, and it's much more sustainable and conservation friendly. But what happened with fishing? What image comes to your mind when you think about fishing? It's not the same as birding. Fishing is still throwing your everything, overfishing. I mean, we all get the image of taking fish out of their environment and not even to look at them, like it's mainly to eat or just for fun. But things are changing, I think. Anglers are the ones fishing, but they also happen to be the ones that are more in contact with freshwater environments. We have them there all the time. They are most connected with this environment. And at the same time, the technology that is coming up is, it's aimed at this business. It's aimed at fishing better. So there is a potential to use this technology, the data we collect through this technology, to somehow produce knowledge, this outreach, that help us go perform better conservation. And I'm gonna tell you about a couple of examples that we have been working on there in the Nature Research Center in this regard. And one of the first examples of this technology is this sonar from the brand Deeper. It's a personal sonar that you can cast with your fishing rod. You can throw into the water, and it gives you what you see on the left. It creates a map of the bottom. You can see also, like in your phone app, you can see where the fish are, where the schools are, where the vegetation is. So it enhances a lot the experience of fishing, and it also collects lots of data. We have arranged an agreement with this company for this project to be able to analyze all this data. And for example, allow me For example, we just submitted a paper analyzing how reliable could be for us to use the data we get from Deeper, because as this is a personal device, we know the location and the activity of each angler that uses this device. So maybe it will be a much easier and efficient way of count how many anglers are angling at a given time in a given location. So we can see how much pressure these anglers are putting in an environment, or what's their behavior. And regarding the behavior, another way of using this data is this other project. This has been mostly my work during the past months. It's analyzing how these anglers are moving around in different areas of Europe. For example, this graph here was an attempt to analyze how the COVID lockdowns, the related COVID-related lockdowns, how have affected the. I mean, if you cannot go to work or go to the pub, what do? You can go fishing. So we have been analyzing the effect of COVID in these spikes of fishing fishing engagement during the lockdown. And something very interesting is that for different countries, you get very different behaviors. And I really love in the Czech Republic how it's a wave. Usually in spring, summer, you get this wave. But for example, in Lithuania, they like very much ice fishing. And so you see also spikes in ice fishing. And in Denmark is a bit different. So it's different for every country. And this data collected by the anglers, who are our agents in the field, we can use them to inform authorities to see, for example, what do we do if, for example, if we put a law here and prevent people from going fishing here, what will happen with the other places that are not protected, for example? And will we see an influx of anglers on this side? This is very useful data, and particularly is much faster than, for example, going around doing polls. Like if you have to send emails to people, how many times do you fish every day? You get many potential errors in your data of people that write their impression more or less, or they don't reply to the emails, for example, or you have to send people to the field to count them with the binoculars and see there are 700 anglers here. With this, you see the real data, and we can do predictions about it. But that's not all. Like these devices are also collecting real-time images of what's out there under the water. So we can see how many fish there are in a rough way, or we can see how the environment changes. So this has a lot of potential to have like a spot, a point of being able to control what is in the water at any given time. Another another piece of technology that has improved a lot in these last years is underwater cameras. Before, you will go, I mean, you couldn't do like when with bird watching, you couldn't go there with a camera and take photos. Underwater, you couldn't use it. But now anybody can have a camera and go underwater. And I can show you my own videos with this in freshwater. Are fantastic. You can see on the right, you can see I was using this small camera to capture the behavior of this guy in Texas defending his nest. He has cleaned everything. I mean, any person now can have direct access to knowledge of fish more than ever before. And so there is potential for people other than anglers to go out there and start fishing in the same sense as we do birding now, like go see fish. And you will think that this is far-fetched. No, this is not going to happen. How is going people going to go just to go fishing like that with their cameras. Well, I can tell you that this is already happening. This is an example from Australia where you have a tour that you can hire, and they take you on a freshwater ride to look for everything up, below, and under the water. This one is from the US. Like you can also you get the snorkeling equipment and the wetsuit, and then you go around with a guide looking underwater. This is the same. You go with a canoe, but you look at the fish underneath. And this is very interesting. A common complaint I get is that no, it will be impossible because the water it will be very murky. You couldn't see anything. Well, if they are able to do this in the UK, I think there are places to do this anywhere. And then it's happening. It's happening. Little by little, we are getting more interested in what's underwater too. And this has a special advantage, which is that this is also getting quite popular. It's the citizen science. People are getting more and more interested about collecting their observations and sharing them. And there are a plethora of apps to follow this, to identify plants and to see that I saw a griffon belcher or the snowy of the other news. But there is something happening here. This is one of the most popular apps to collect observations, iNaturalist, which I myself use. And you can see there 86 million observations. But how many of these are birds, for example? 11 million, almost 12. But fish, so far, it is not even 1 million. So it's starting. It's starting, but it needs a bigger push. It needs more outreach and more push from us that are starting there. And a very, very good thing is that anglers are catching up on this much faster. For example, this apart from our partnership with Deeper, for example, this other app, Fishbrain, a Danish one, is also joining scientists and to analyze all the data they are collecting. Because on the left, you can see lots of different activities, outreach activities, citizen science activities, all based on angling and fishing. So they are already on top of this technology. There is a lot of potential here to use anglers and to engage anglers on outreach and to be our ambassadors of freshwater biodiversity. And one of the projects we have been working on, and especially our next presenter, is this particular app aimed at anglers, which is aiming to collect more specific data, more useful data for scientific purposes. Because usually in social media or iNaturalist, you collect only the photos, and maybe sometimes you say where you were and all of this. But something that it will be really, really useful for conservation purposes, for research purposes, is collect the size of your captures in the case of anglers. And this is something we will hear about in a few minutes after my talk, more deeper. So I'm not gonna go deeper in this. But I just wanted to end sharing the main webpage of this project we are working for. Here, as you can see, there are resources for anglers, for scientists, for managers, and then how we are using this data to promote conservation in fish and to really transform this data into knowledge that will finally make this change, this swatch, or at least to extend this meaning for fishing. And I mean, with the years, I've ended up knowing what this means. This to know them is to love them. And it's in general is that we don't care, we humans don't care about the things we don't know about. and this happens in every aspect of our lives. Like, we don't care mostly about refugees because they are far away. We don't know about them. The moment you know about them, you start caring a bit more. And with animals, it's especially with animals, they have something that goes beyond that. The more you know about them, the more you end up loving them. And like last day's talk have proven that. Like, I'm still remembering that image of this terrified woman holding the snake, and I think of this, like, this woman wants to hold the snake and will end up loving the snake because she has learned about it, and then we can hopefully get to a point in which we get this craziness also about fish. So that is my hope, and we will be working hard to get to that level. And with this, I would like to thank you all for listening and all the funding bodies. And I'm happy to answer your questions.
Okay. Thank you, Nando.
So yeah, many anglers are using now the device.
And you normally provide it to the Sonar?
No, this is a commercial company that sells them. And naturally, people want, I mean, as it enhances so much the fishing experience, many anglers are taking it because it's so much fun to see where the fish are and how the bottom is. So it's a commercial venture. And this is like the good part of capitalism, no? you get a very big push in anything that is commercial like that. What we are doing as scientists is piggybacking on it and reusing this data for even better good. So and I think it's going to happen like with the birds, no? Something a commercial device such as this binoculars for the opera, or the cameras, the underwater cameras. All of this is enabling more users into knowing what's underwater and to really getting engaged. So that's at least my hope.
So there is some database device Sonar. You can find them on the database. Those anglers started to use the Sonar, right?
Yes, it's anonymous data, but the company sends us the data, anonymous data, on the activity of these anglers. And then we will have access also to these scans, and then to what the sonar actually sees. That will be much more difficult to maneuver and to manage, but it will be also very useful.
Well, that's actually not finalized yet. At the moment, we have the anonymous data, and we haven't that sort of potential that we could have scans. This is a huge amount of data and some work, but yes, even the anonymous user data is already a lot of data work. So yeah.
Okay, can I just ask how much does it cost the person?
I don't know. It's like 30 euros or something like that.
So I can't actually the questions from the audience.
I was asking what's the price of this sonar, and I think it's.
Oh no, I think it varies from 100 to a few hundred, depending on what you want to have.
There are many different models, and there is a very basic one. Like I don't remember. I thought I saw a very cheap one, and then you can get several hundreds, depending on the unit. Yes.
And I'm wondering if you are planning to analyze, the relationship between the number of people using the sonar and the number of catches or the fish taken by the fishermen.
So
if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. One thing is that we know the number of users of this sonar. Then we have to find a way to extrapolate that number to the total user of anglers, the total anglers of a country. And then once we find this extrapolation relationship, we can predict, using the data from the sonar, we can predict other numbers. And this is the paper I was mentioning that we have recently submitted, in which we use traditional methods of counting, like visual counts of anglers in a lake, in a very big lake in Lithuania. And we compare this method also with drone counts that could be also very efficient once the drones get at the consumer level almost, or we use in this case a military grade drone that counts them from the air. And then we compare that with our extrapolation from the data from the sonar. And then we see that apart from being very efficient and much cheaper, the numbers are equivalent. It depends on certain cases. For example, it changes if it's ice season, at least in Lithuania, because then the device gets much more popular. So then you have to have that into account, but still we can do a very safe extrapolation.
Because,
but if I understood correctly, the question was whether it also relates to the number of fish taken out of the water, and that would be really interesting to know. But we don't know, of course. Finding out how many anglers there are, that's hard enough. But finding out how much they catch, this is that's a holy grail of recreational fishing research, basically. It's really hard. We are trying to do it now, but at the moment, most of the reliable work that is used in analysis is actually going and asking people and doing surveys and counting what they do. And that's a lot of work. But of course, that's why we need technology, and that's why we need apps where people could actually report in theory what they catch, and you could at least extrapolate. But the bigger question maybe is even whether this sonar, using this sonar, will allow you to catch more fish. And of course, so whether it's actually good for conservation or whether it's bad. I mean, does it increase the pressure on the fish because you can hunt down every single fish? And initially when I heard about it, I thought, oh no, now there is no secret, no hiding place for the fish left at all. Basically, they can all be found. But it is not necessarily clear. I mean, we talk to a lot of anglers about it. Does it actually do you catch more fish or not? What do you think? And I'm not like, no, the company people are listening. Of course, they might be thinking that that might improve the catch, but actually that's not even the main goal. The goal is to enhance your experience so that you actually can see something underwater, and it's fun. It's actually, and when we talk to anglers, it turns out a lot of them are saying, I'm actually not even catching a lot of fish. I spend half of the day just going and using the sonar in different places and observing, and by the time I decide where to fish, then it's actually time to go home or something like that. So in a way, by learning about it, by watching it, suddenly people become interested in just like, how does it look? Like, okay, there is this big fish. So, I'm not
actually parallel with the technology of the birds. Like people were scared that if you had binoculars, you will be better at hunting, and then it will be bad, the technology for the bird conservation. But it's happening exactly the same. They get engaged in what's underwater.
And of course, it would be even more exciting if you had a camera, so you could actually see the fish and their behavior and so on. Then you are even more interested in seeing it, because like today, like even some photos that Fernando showed from iNaturalist, most of the fish that are reported there, at least the ones that were there, are dead ones. They are the ones that are kind of taken out of the water, and they don't actually look how they normally would look. I mean, it's like reporting birds that are sort of all dead. I mean, nobody's doing that anymore, but yeah, maybe we'll get to that with fish as well.
I mean, if you think about it, this is a general trend in society. It's even from a neutral point. We are not saying that angling is bad, but we can see already the trend. For example, we were talking about it the other day, that in Germany, it's now illegal to fish for fun. Like they see it as wrong. Like if you fish something, you have to take it home to eat, or you cannot. It's like strange. It's like the thinking is changing, and the more we know the fish, the more attached we feel to them. Like it happens now with birds. So it's something that is naturally changing in society. But we will see. We have to ride this trend and see where it takes us.
But I just would like to say that it has some positive sides also. For example, in the case of the European eel, you know, the Czech Republic is one of the last places in Europe which have European eel, because to be able to bring them from the Atlantic Ocean, to catch them on there and bring it somewhere, it needs money. And there would be no money for this without money from fishermen who want to, you know, pay for the license to catch these fish. So there are some positive sides of fishing too, for example, and the European eel is a great example. So yeah, it's not always bad.
Exactly the title of my talk. Like I think that they are the first ones interested in keeping freshwater biodiversity, and the more they know, the more they will want to preserve it, and the more we collect this all data from everywhere and create knowledge for everyone, the more we will all love also what's underneath the water. So I totally agree. Well, if there are no more questions, now we are lucky enough to have questions.